Welcome to St Andrew's Presbyterian, Morwell. I'm John Higgins. Welcome to the next instalment of the life of an organist. One of the key roles of an organist is playing for the hymns, as we've discussed, and the carols this time of Christmas. And part of that is having appropriate registrations, which means the musical sounds of the organ. A good way of explaining it is just as an artist uses a number of colours in the palette, the colour palette, to paint a picture and to really bring it to life and make it realistic. In the same way, an organist can use the tonal palette of the instrument to paint pictures of what the verses may be saying or to convey a certain tone or idea. And in addition, it adds great variety and interest to the congregation rather than just singing to the same principal chorus sound throughout. I'm privileged to play this heritage and historic 1873 Speechly Ingram pipe organ, which has many beautiful sounds, and despite being a small two-manual English instrument, each stop is of great quality and is a delight to play, and I'd like to share some of the sound possibilities with you. Let's look at one of the Christmas carols for the 9 lessons and carols, the First Noel. So, we spoke in one of the previous videos about introductions. Sometimes I like to play the introduction on the swell with a quieter sound before leading into a strong principal chorus on the great for the opening verse to get off to a good start. So here's the introduction on the swell. Verse 1. We can take a slightly lighter chorus, which I've done by removing the open diapason on the grate and just using the 8-foot Clarabelle flute, which still provides 8-foot tone but is softer and creates a different dynamic, particularly in the trebles where you can hear the sound of the flute. I'll just play a short excerpt for the sake of time, just to give you an idea of how that sounds. So still a strong sound for leading the singing, but a different tone and character. Next is an idea that I like to use that may not necessarily be the most popular. Perhaps it's a reality for organists on small instruments such as this one, where there are not a particularly large number of stops to choose from, and some of the quieter stops are not really suitable perhaps for leading the singing, so it doesn't leave that many options. But a sound that I like to explore is using the beautiful 8-foot Clarabella stop on the grate and the 4-foot wall flute up an octave in the right hand. And what this does is that it effectively creates 4-foot and 2-foot pitch, because we're playing the 8-foot and 4-foot stops up an octave. This adds sufficient clarity for the congregation to hear the singing, and as you can hear in the upper treble range, the volume and power increases, and I like to think gives almost a French harmonic flute sound, which you can hear. Whereas down in the ordinary range wouldn't really provide a clear enough lead. So again, we'll just show this as an example of a possibility. Quite a pleasant sound, and in the past I've found is still sufficient for leading the singing. Next, the beautiful full swell, which is quite a low volume, being a small 2-manual English organ, just sufficient for congregational singing. It probably does get a little bit swamped when there's a full house singing, but still the full swell, which is open diapason, 8 foot, Lieblich Gedacht 8 foot, Gemshorn 4 foot, and oboe 8 foot, is a beautiful warm sound and has a real tonal interest. And so on. Then for the next verse, and I neglected to say, this is quite a long Christmas carol in our particular hymn book. We have 6 verses, so it is quite a long one. And one of the advantages of changing registrations for each verse is it gives me the ability to remember where I'm up to. And I think every organist has had a terrifying experience where they've gone to play full organ for the last verse and found the congregation is already sitting down, or perhaps the congregation have gone to sing another verse almost as you're closing the hymn book. Either way is not a fun experience. So by changing the registration, it gives me the ability to keep my place, and it's also a very good idea to make sure that you consult with the hymn book, or in my case the slideshow that will be used at the front of the church, because sometimes the slideshow has a different number of verses to the hymn book, so don't make that mistake. So for the 5th verse, we have an option of the lovely 8 foot sounds on this organ. So we have on the great open diapason 8 foot, clarabelle flute 8 foot, and gamba, which is a beautiful warm sound. How about we pick up from the refrain for something different? Last verse, I'm only going to go up to principal 4 foot on the great and a couple of swell foot down, the swell manual down through the couplers, which makes the action fairly heavy on a mechanical organ, but is a great sound. I'm not going to use the mixture for this last verse because the mixture isn't a true mixture on this organ. It's only a 2 2/3 and a 2 foot principal sound, so it doesn't really have the upper work that you would expect on a large cathedral organ. But having said that, I do like to save the mixture for some of the later carols when I want a strong finish. But I think you'll agree that full swell and most of the great up until the mixture still provides a great sound. So let's also use a descant for the last verse, just to add something different, and is quite an enjoyable finish. team for the First Noel. Please do tune in on Friday the 19th of December for the live stream of the carols to hear more like this, and watch out for the continuing series on the life of an organist, which I'll share my journey on the lead up to Christmas. Thank you, take care, bye.